There comes a moment in every life when the noise fades, and the truth stands naked in front of you. No applause, no excuses, no one to blame, just you and the quiet realization that the distance between where you are and where you want to be has never been about luck, or talent, or timing. It has always been about one thing: whether you decide to stand when quitting feels easier. History does not remember the gifted. It remembers the relentless, the ones who were told no so many times that rejection lost its power, the ones who failed so publicly that embarrassment became irrelevant, the ones who stared straight into uncertainty and said, "I will not move." Success has never been polite. It does not ask permission. It does not arrive early because you're tired or late because you're afraid. Success obeys a higher law, the law of persistence, and that law answers only to those who refuse to quit. Most people don't lose because they lack ability. They lose because they lose belief. They allow doubt to whisper long enough that it sounds like truth. They allow fear to sit at the head of the table and vote on their future. And slowly, quietly, they negotiate their dreams down to something manageable, something safe, something small. But the mind was never designed for smallness. Napoleon Hill wrote that the human mind can achieve whatever it can conceive and believe. Not wish, not hope. Believe. Belief is not optimism. Belief is a decision. It is a declaration made in advance of evidence. It is the inner agreement that no matter what appears on the outside, you will not abandon the vision on the inside. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb by accident. He outlasted darkness. He failed so many times that failure became routine, and routine became irrelevant. When asked about his failures, he said he had not failed. He had simply found thousands of ways that did not work. That is not intelligence speaking. That is persistence wearing a human voice. And persistence begins in the mind. Your circumstances are not the truth. They are the result of previous thinking. Your bank account is not your destiny. Your past is not your potential. Your environment is not your identity. These are effects. The cause is always internal, always mental, always governed by what you consistently tell yourself when no one is listening. Every great achiever understood this. Andrew Carnegie rose from poverty not by chance, but by clarity. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he aligned his thoughts, his decisions, and his alliances with that desire. He surrounded himself with minds sharper than his own, because he understood that success is never built alone. It is forged through harmony of purpose, and purpose is born the moment you stop drifting. Most people drift through life reacting instead of directing. They wake up already tired because they have no vision pulling them forward. They confuse movement with progress and activity with achievement. They are busy, but they are not intentional. And without intention, effort scatters, energy leaks, time dissolves. But the disciplined mind moves differently. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. It is training the mind to obey the vision rather than the mood. The undisciplined mind asks, "How do I feel today?" The disciplined mind asks, "What does my future require?" Henry Ford was ridiculed, dismissed, and doubted. Banks laughed at him. Experts told him it couldn't be done. But Ford understood something that most people never learn. Opinions do not build empires. Conviction does. He failed, lost everything, and stood back up with the same idea burning inside him. Not because he was stubborn, but because he was certain. Certainty is power, and certainty is cultivated through repetition of thought. What you think today, you strengthen. What you strengthen, you become. This is why Hill emphasized autosuggestion, not as fantasy, but as conditioning. You are programming yourself whether you realize it or not. The question is, who is writing the code? If you speak limitation, you install limitation. If you rehearse fear, you rehearse defeat. But when you deliberately speak strength, vision, and resolve, even when your voice shakes, you are laying the mental rails your future will ride on. Success does not require perfection. It requires persistence. And persistence requires resilience, the ability to stay emotionally neutral in the face of temporary defeat. Every failure carries a seed, not a lesson you read about, a seed you earn. But most people never collect it, because they quit before the harvest. They walk away inches from insight, moments from mastery, days from breakthrough. Walt Disney was fired for lacking imagination. Fired? Let that sink in. His early ventures collapsed. He was bankrupt. But his vision did not negotiate with reality. It commanded it. He saw a world before the world was ready to see it. And instead of asking for permission, he built it anyway. This is the pattern. First comes the vision, then comes resistance, then comes doubt, then comes pressure. And right there, at the peak of resistance, is where most people turn back. But those who refuse to quit discover something profound. Resistance is not a sign to stop. It is proof that you are approaching something meaningful. And the moment you internalize that truth, everything changes. You stop asking, Why is this hard? And you start asking, who am I becoming because it is hard? That question changes the way you walk, the way you think, the way you endure. It turns obstacles into initiation. It turns pain into preparation. It turns waiting into sharpening. Because success has never belonged to the fastest, or the smartest, or the loudest. It has always belonged to the one who stayed. The world eventually responds because persistence rewires reality itself, not through force, but through inevitability. When you show up again, and again with the same intention, the same standard, the same refusal to bow, something invisible begins to shift. Opportunities reorganize. People sense it before they can explain it. Resistance weakens, not because it vanished, but because you outlasted it. This is a truth few accept. Life yields not to desire, but to identity. You do not get what you want. You get what you are willing to remain loyal to. Most people are loyal to comfort, loyal to explanation, loyal to the story of why it hasn't worked yet. They protect their reasons like armor, never realizing that those reasons are the very thing keeping them small. But the moment you stop explaining and start embodying, the game changes. Abraham Lincoln lost election after election. He failed in business. He buried children. He carried grief that would have crushed most men. And yet, when history called for a steady hand and an unbreakable will, it found him prepared, not because life was kind, but because he endured without surrendering his inner alignment. This is the hidden work. You are not preparing for what you see now. You are preparing for a moment you cannot yet predict. And the strength required for that moment is built in silence, when no one is watching, plotting, or validating your effort. That is why quitting is so tempting. Quitting promises relief. Quitting whispers comfort. Quitting offers an immediate escape from pressure. But quitting never delivers peace. It delivers regret, slow, quiet, and permanent. Those who succeed understand this early or learn it painfully. Discomfort is temporary. Regret is forever. And discipline is the bridge between vision and reality. Discipline is waking up when the body resists. It is continuing when motivation evaporates. It is executing when inspiration is absent. The disciplined individual does not wait for alignment. They create it through action. Napoleon Hill observed that definiteness of purpose, backed by persistence, is the starting point of all achievement. Notice what is missing from that formula. Certainty of outcome. Ease. Speed. Approval. Achievement demands commitment before clarity. You will not always know how it will work. You will not always see progress. Sometimes the only evidence you have is that you are still standing, still moving, still believing when belief feels irrational. That is when the transformation is happening, because the mind resists change. It clings to the familiar even when the familiar is painful. Growth feels like loss to an untrained mind. New identity feels dangerous. Success threatens the old self, the old relationships, the old patterns. So fear appears, not to stop you, but to test your loyalty. Will you stay true to the vision when the cost becomes personal? Will you continue when others stop understanding you? Will you persist when praise turns into silence? This is where the crowd thins. And this is where destiny begins to take shape. The ones who refuse to quit develop an uncommon relationship with time. They stop rushing. They stop forcing. They understand that progress compounds invisibly before it ever appears publicly. Just like roots growing underground before the tree breaks the surface. You cannot rush roots. Most people abandon the process because they cannot see results. They forget that the most important growth happens beneath awareness. Skills, confidence, emotional control, strategic thinking, inner stability. These qualities cannot be faked. They must be earned. And they are earned through sustained effort under pressure. Pressure reveals who you are loyal to. When pressure comes, do you negotiate your standards, or do you deepen them? When obstacles rise, do you shrink your goals, or do you strengthen your resolve? Success watches these moments carefully. Because success is selective, it does not reward those who try. It rewards those who decide. Decision is final. Decision cuts off retreat. Decision burns the boats behind you and forces creativity forward. Half-hearted effort produces half-lived lives. Full commitment produces transformation. This is why Hill warned against drifting, the silent killer of potential. Drifting is not laziness. It is the absence of a fixed aim. And without a fixed aim, effort scatters and persistence weakens. Fix your aim, not on outcomes alone, but on becoming the kind of person who finishes what they start. The kind of person who honors their word to themselves. The kind of person who does not abandon the vision when it becomes inconvenient. Because the greatest betrayal is not failure, it is self-abandonment. And every time you keep going, when quitting would be easier, you restore trust with yourself. That trust becomes confidence. Confidence becomes authority. Authority becomes influence. And influence reshapes your world. Stay in the work. Stay in the belief. Stay in the discomfort long enough for it to turn into strength. Because success is not chasing you, it is watching. And it moves toward the one who refuses to leave the field. And the field is where character is revealed. Not announced, not advertised, revealed. When no one is counting your hours, when no one is measuring your effort, when no one is promising you that it will work out in the end. The field is where you learn whether your desire is a preference or a commitment. Most people want success the way they want comfort, casually. They want it as long as it doesn't demand too much of their identity. They want progress without pressure, growth without grief, reward without responsibility. But the universe does not respond to want. It responds to alignment. Alignment between thought and action, between vision and behavior, between who you say you are becoming, and what you do when it is hardest to do it. This is why persistence is sacred. Persistence is not stubbornness. It is faith with muscle. It is belief expressed through behavior. It is the quiet agreement you make with yourself, that no matter how long it takes, you will not reverse direction. Napoleon Hill understood that faith is a state of mind, induced by autosuggestion, by repeated, deliberate focus on the desired outcome until doubt loses its voice. Faith is not blind. It is trained. You train it every time you act without immediate reward. You train it every time you continue without applause. You train it every time you show up tired, but disciplined. And slowly, something irreversible happens inside you. You stop asking for permission. You stop seeking validation. You stop negotiating with fear. You begin to move with an inner authority that cannot be shaken by external conditions. This is what separates those who rise from those who rationalize. The rising individual understands that emotions are temporary, but identity is permanent. They do not confuse how they feel with who they are. They do not allow a bad day to redefine a great direction. They do not allow a setback to rewrite the vision. They remain loyal to the long game. John D. Rockefeller built wealth not through impulse, but through patience. He understood cycles. He understood restraint. He understood that reacting emotionally to short-term fluctuations destroys long-term power. While others panicked, he remained steady. While others chased, he waited. And while others quit, he compounded. Compounding is invisible until it isn't. That is the paradox most people never survive long enough to experience. The effort feels heavy, the progress feels slow, the rewards feel distant, until one day, suddenly, they are not. Suddenly the leverage appears. Suddenly the doors open. Suddenly the same people who doubted begin to ask how it happened. And the truth is uncomfortable. It happened while no one was looking. It happened during the days you wanted to stop but didn't. It happened during the nights you questioned everything, but stayed the course. It happened because you refused to quit when quitting would have made sense to everyone else. This refusal changes how you experience time. You stop measuring success by weeks and months. You begin measuring it by depth, mastery, and alignment. You understand that some seasons are for planting, some for growing, and some for harvesting, and confusing them leads to frustration. Patience becomes power when it is paired with action, because patience without action is waiting, and action without patience is chaos. But together, they create inevitability. The disciplined individual does not chase motivation. They design systems. They build habits that operate even when emotion fails. They reduce friction between intention and execution. They make it easier to do what must be done and harder to do what must be avoided. This is not glamour. This is structure. Every moment spent hesitating is a moment spent reinforcing indecision. And indecision is the enemy of persistence. It fractures focus. It weakens belief. It creates escape routes where commitment should live. Decide once. Decide who you are becoming. Decide what you stand for. Decide what you will no longer tolerate from yourself. And then let time do its work. The individual who refuses to quit develops a rare calm, not because life becomes easy, but because uncertainty no longer threatens their identity. They understand that results fluctuate, but principles endure. They trust the process because they have committed to becoming someone who finishes. This trust produces resilience. Resilience is not toughness. It is flexibility under pressure. It is the ability to bend without breaking, to adapt without abandoning, to learn without retreating. Failure becomes feedback. Loss becomes instruction. Delay becomes preparation. And criticism becomes irrelevant. Because when your direction is fixed, noise fades. This is why the most dangerous moment in the journey is not failure. It is early success. Early success seduces. It softens discipline. It invites complacency. It whispers that the work is done. But the one who refuses to quit does not confuse momentum with mastery. They stay hungry. They stay humble. They stay consistent. They understand that success is not a destination. It is a standard of thinking, a standard of behavior, a standard of persistence. And once that standard is set, it governs every decision. You stop asking, is this comfortable? You start asking, is this aligned? You stop asking, What will they think? You start asking, who will I become if I keep going? And that question carries weight, because the person you become through persistence is stronger than any reward you will ever receive. Money can be lost,